Buddy. My name is Alex Ball. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing here at WorkForge, and I am really excited for today's conversation and excited to walk through some really interesting data and some great talking points with our food safety and health and safety subject matter experts. So today's presentation, Protecting Your Brand, starts with safety. I'm going to walk through just a couple of housekeeping items before we get going. One, I will cover just the technical things for everybody to know on the webinar. I'll introduce today's speakers, and then I'm going to walk through some high-level data just to kind of set the tone for the panel that we're going to have today. And then we will flip over and talk to Gary and Erik. So first things first, from a housekeeping standpoint, everyone is muted by default. If you do have questions, use the Q&A section on the bottom right panel of your Livestorm window and ask your questions. If we run out of time and do not get to everyone's questions, we will follow up after the fact. And after the event, everyone will receive a copy of the recording that attended or registered. All right, really quickly, I'd like to introduce today's speakers. First off, we have Erik Kurdelak, who is a food scientist with over 20 years experience in food processing and food safety. He has worked for the Indiana Department of Health, Purdue University, Wix Pies, and many others. And then Gary Cluck, who is an authorized OSHA trainer who has 30 plus years in safety at Schwann's, Kroger, Nestle Purina, and several others. As I mentioned, both of these gentlemen help with being our subject matter experts for all of WorkForge's food safety and health and safety content, and that you all know and enjoy today. Now, as I mentioned, I want to walk through a couple of quick data points to talk about some of the why behind what prompted this conversation today. Now, I'm going to share some numbers that are available to the public through the USDA, FDA, OSHA, and a couple others. Now, these are, at this juncture, what we believe are some leading indicators to think that there could be some substantial regulatory changes in the amounts of audits and the frequency with which audits are presented, which creates a different onus on you as a business that you will not necessarily have potentially the same level of oversight. So, as we get started, I want to look at the FDA. The FDA is been trending down from a number of inspections year over year. The chart you're looking at shows, 2023 sitting at around 11,000 and seeing a decrease of roughly 500 per year. And if you do the quick math right now as to where the number of FDA inspections have been, it's actually not quite trending to hit that 2025 projection, which also would mean that the projection for 26-27 might follow the same trend line. As you look at the USDA, now, although we have not seen audits decrease, there have been substantial decreases in headcount, which we believe is a potential indicator that we may start to see changes come down the line in 2026. And as you look at OSHA, right now, at minimum, news outlets are projecting that there's going to be an 8% decrease in the budget in 2026. We've seen numbers as high as 12% and have seen numbers to say that of that, we could see headcount decreases in that 10 or 11% as well. Now, this all presents some substantial business risks to you as a business that you could potentially have less oversight. And, it's not unrealistic to expect that if auditors are not there as much, human nature is that people could get complacent or maybe take the foot off the gas on the level of investments in their safety protocols, safety trainings, and things of that nature. And obviously that presents some business risks to you and your brand because the consumer at the end of the day is not going to care whether you're audited frequently or not. They are going to expect that you are presenting a safe product for your consumers to eat and in a manner that's done safely in your plant so that the employees making it are also taken care of and get home to their families safe every evening. Now, as we look at that, I mentioned that consumers' belief is going to be paramount. And interestingly enough, some recent surveys have shown that confidence in food safety is actually down and trending to all-time lows when you look at some various survey data. And you can see here, this chart will show the trend line of people that said they were very to somewhat confident and very confident over the years. And you can see continued declines. And as you look at the chart on the left, you can see that there's substantial decreases. And, overall, very few people fall in that very confident bucket to begin with. Most of them fall into that somewhat confident and not too confident bucket. So you're looking at an environment where you have maybe less regulators, less oversight, and consumer confidence going down, which is only going to make that risk of a recall even stronger. Now, as you look at some of the reasons behind that consumer confidence decrease, you're seeing that profit is being prioritized over safety. They don't necessarily believe everyone across the system is working together. They don't believe that government regulation is strict enough and that there are already too many recalls. So, again, this all boils down to a substantial risk for you and your business, that an issue is potentially going to be amplified because of that decrease in confidence. Additionally, we're looking at some substantial labor challenges that are out there. 2.1 million manufacturing jobs are to go unfilled between now and 2030. 11,000 Americans are turning 65 every day, which means that you're going to have a lot of institutional knowledge walking out your building over the next few years as folks hit retirement age. And you have to replace those folks with younger generations who don't necessarily have the talent and experience that other generations had. They weren't raised working with their hands as much, and that leads to potential turnover challenges. And we've seen those numbers, to be in the 30 to 40% number, if not worse in some spaces. So when you look at the cost of hiring people, the risk of them turning over quickly and already needing to, teach people more of the job than ever before, that also presents potential risk for safety challenges, as new employees are more likely to make a mistake than a tenured and experienced employee. So, some very interesting data points to set the stage for today's conversation. So I am very excited to have today's presenters, Erik and Gary, join us to talk through some of these challenges. And it does look like we might have lost Gary for a second. Oh, he's popping right back in there.
There he is.
Had a little bit of
Sorry,
internet challenge.
internet.
That's all right. Anything that can go wrong will, right? So Erik, Gary, thank you for joining us today. I'm really excited to have you both on this panel and to have your expertise shared with this audience. So let me just start by asking you both, after having looked at all these numbers, what do these numbers tell you as food safety and OSHA experts?
Well, I think one thing is to really consider that FDA's own dashboard is showing that they are not getting into facilities at the same frequency that they used to. When we see a drop off of 500 visits per year, so we're losing that many site visits. So there are fewer audits, right? And so that is shifting some of this federal oversight to, also local state agencies, but also to the food manufacturers themselves. And it is a big shift to more self accountability. And you look at that and you say this trend is real, and it's expected to continue and expected to really drop off even more. And so yes, we do have recalls, and we do have very public discussions in the news and in other outlets about, hey, this is a food product to be leery of, or this is something that's currently being recalled. But then you say to yourself, well, the inspections are going down, but the recalls are still there. So that means the inspections are effective, right? Well, true, but there's also this element of when the cat's away, the mice will play, right? So if there are people that are complacent and they're thinking, hey, nobody's checking on this, can I cut a corner? Can I take one step out of the process? Can I push a little more on the throughput and a little less on the food safety? The microbes don't care. We start cutting corners, the microbes are going to be there, and if the conditions are favorable, you're going to have problems that are going to hurt your brand and your community and everything else. So the consumers are going to start to ask, really, how do I know it's safe? How do I guarantee that this product is safe before I feed it to somebody that I love? And a lot of that comes down to the brand strength. But I think Gary probably has some comments on the OSHA side of things as well.
Yeah, a lot of this is a little bit worrisome, because now you're potentially going to see fewer inspections from OSHA. Where they don't have as much funding, they don't tend to get out as much, which could result in delayed responses to safety violations and a reduction in maybe some of those proactive safety training initiatives that need to happen. We could also see increased risks. The cuts could potentially leave workers more vulnerable, especially if they're working with within a company that doesn't prioritize or value safety as what they do. We see that sometimes. And also weakened enforcement. OSHA's ability to introduce new safety standards. I just saw today where the heat stress standard is now being pushed back again, which may compromise, the scientific research that OSHA does with NIOSH for guidance. So, like Eric said, we're going to have to step up and do what's right and take more responsibility for food safety and for the occupational safety of our employees and contractors and temps and everyone else involved.
Mhm. So yeah, you're really, interesting. You're really looking at a world where people that are already in plants that have a lot on their plate are really only going to see more get added to their plate. And it's going to be really important to prioritize how you focus on those things because, nothing is more important to your business than your brand. And a safety issue either on the food side or the human side can have a substantial impact on that brand. So, I would love to get both of your takes on how you would position this conversation as to why it's so important for each of these folks listening today to increase their focus on safety protocols to protect their brand. Eric?
Right. I think the main thing is understanding that while we have a tremendously safe food supply in the nation, the brand recognition is going to carry a lot of the credibility moving forward. The consumer is going to see that and they're going to say, I trust this brand. I know this brand. And if you have a brand that is not a household name and you have a brand that is not nationally distributed, how does the consumer gain confidence in that if there's not that underpinning of, well, at least we know that somebody in the FDA has checked us out? The USDA numbers are really flat right now, but we're expecting those to drop just because they have to, because of the 15,000 member reduction. And I know they're saying, oh, well, a lot of those cuts aren't going to be on the inspection side and on the auditing side, but we can kind of see the writing on the wall that there's going to be a lot of constriction there. And so the brand is going to be kind of tested in the court of public approval, right?
Mhm.
And if something happens and someone is harmed by a product, it's going to get out in a hurry. And when you lose that public trust, there are ripple effects.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing goes on the personnel safety side. If your brand is considered, a very dangerous place to work, that could be a problem. But um, I think Gary probably
Yeah,
have something to say on that.
absolutely. Once you lose that trust, it is so difficult and takes a while to rebuild it. But, employees are quick to tell others. Social media is so powerful these days, and word will spread. You don't want to work for this company here because there's no trust, there's no collaboration, there's massive turnover, they just don't appreciate me. And that's the main thing. Folks want to feel valued for what they are doing. And when you don't have a strong safety process with leadership commitment to it, it shows and it will suffer. And when you don't have quality employees that care and take pride in what they're doing because they are looked after to do the right things, they're going to leave. They're going to go someplace else where they feel like they're important.
Yeah. And Gary, when we were doing some of the practice sessions for this, you talked a little bit around, some tangible examples of how important protecting your employee brand is, or employer brand is in your community. Because a lot of food manufacturers are in small towns. Word travels fast, and your pool of people to hire is already pretty small. Can you talk a little bit more about how critical it is to make sure people feel like their employer has their safety first in mind?
Well, when it starts really early during the hiring process, during the orientations, and that sets the tone, and that will have a lingering effect on retention for employees. you've got to be very clear in the job description. Provide tours for employees of the facility so they know exactly what they're going to be doing. I love this example that I saw where I used to work, where we had a safety committee member help lead the discussion for new hire orientation. So it just wasn't coming from the safety manager, it was coming from a peer.
Yep.
And that resonated quite well within the
Mhm.
organization. Be clear on the expectations. Be clear that we want to value your input. You have fresh eyes, you bring new experiences to the company. uh, Demonstration from senior leadership, making sure that they are okay when someone has a stop work authority saying, oh, this is not safe. We need to shut this line down, and have that support, because it's not an easy decision when you compromise production for safety sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I love that example. And I think it's so critical when you start looking at what is the most impactful thing for anyone. And that's also, you mentioned hearing it from peers, people who are doing it. And, when it's done right, you can also hear in their voice and see in their body language that they believe what they're saying. And, that's such a big boost to your culture and what that experience is when somebody starts. Right. So I love that example. I want to shift a little bit though. We talked about, the impact of recruitment and retention, but we also talk about that turnover rate being so high and how important it is, especially in this new environment where you might see, decreased regulations, or at least oversight of the regulations, I should say. Can we talk a little bit about some of the risks of that constant turnover and not having tenured employees who stay a long time, on both the food safety and health and safety side? And Eric, I'll start with you.
Yeah, when we onboard individuals who may not have experience in a food plant, um, they may never have heard GMPs or FSMA or USDA. They may not really know what any of these different terms mean, or what they need to do to promote the safety of their product and to protect everyone around them. And so when you think about that, you know you build that in from the get-go, and you strengthen that employee through that investment in their understanding, and you say, look, we're taking care of each other. You are taking care of these products, and by extension, these products are generating income for the plant, and for you, and for the broader community. And
Mhm.
so everything comes back to that brand strength, and to that uh, protection of the product. Everything I've said many times in this business, everything starts and ends with food safety. When I have trained regulatory officials before, they are encouraged to go and talk to folks out on the production floor, and they will ask the folks, the frontline workers, do you believe these products to be safe? And they'll say yes or no. And if they say no, I wouldn't feed this to my cat, then they say, wait a minute, what's happening here?
Mhm.
Why don't you believe this to be safe? Are you not sanitizing it? Is it poor incoming ingredients? When the employees don't have confidence in the food safety of the product, that creates a huge issue within the facility. And that's something that can be fixed in onboarding and fixed in training, and really fixed in following best practices. When they do have the confidence on the other side, well, now you get the best possible hires, which are the referrals, the people that have been there for decades, and they're bringing in their children to work there, and they're bringing in their neighbors to work there. And they're saying, I've got so much faith that what we are doing is right, and it is appropriate, and it is safe, and I'm proud to be part of it. And they build that loyalty. It goes both ways.
Yep.
So the turnover conversation really minimizes when you have followed protocols and built that food safety culture, and you've really built that trust and loyalty.
That's great information, and I think makes a lot of sense. Gary, I'd love to get your thoughts on this one.
Yeah, you're getting employees coming to an organization, which and many times this may be their first time in a manufacturing environment. So nothing can be taken for granted. When you're talking about, how we protect our employees, how we have things in place like fire extinguishers. Do you know how to use an extinguisher? This is how you do it. Demonstrating, explaining the why behind the things that we do.
Yep.
We have loud noise. We're going to do industrial hygiene testing. Some of you may have to wear a dosimeter to do the sampling. That just goes a long way towards, okay, now you've at least explained it to me. I understand what's going on and I feel more comfortable. But when you are not open with your employees, it shows, and then you get the bare minimum, if that. You don't get what you really want, which is an engaged workforce that
Yep.
shows actively that they want to do the right thing. And that starts with the senior leadership. It really sets the tone for the rest of the organization.
It really does. It's fascinating. I was at a conference just last week, a food safety conference, and one of the examples one of the leaders gave there was that they went to do a plant tour, and they had an employee who was there and doing the metal detecting, and they asked the person, why do you do this? And it was an employee who'd been there a long time, had never made a mistake, was phenomenal, but they'd been there a couple of years. They didn't even know why they did what they did. And when you think
Mhm.
about that it's not enough to do it right, but having that why, having that understanding, and having that culture of ownership is so critical. And it does drive big change in your environment when everybody's not just doing things, but they know why they're doing it, which will drive that career growth and opportunity to stay at a place longer. Um, so we've spent a lot of time this morning kind of talking through setting the stage. I would love to get both of your takes on, kind of next steps and actions that the audience can take to, you know, make sure they're preparing themselves to take on this extra responsibility. So, Erik, from a food safety standpoint, what is the most important thing for a leader to do starting today to adjust to this new world?
Well, I think one of the big points is to be transparent and communicative about, okay, even if we don't see a lot of compliance individuals, we still have our mission, our ethics, our duty. We still have a responsibility to provide these products to take care of each other. Okay, to take care of our customers and our community and our business partners, and to take care of our employees. And it's one of those things that we do, in a certain respect, have to rethink how we approach these conversations. It's not really do this or else, you know, the government's going to come in and shake their finger at you or levy a fine and things like that. That can still happen and will still happen when folks are not compliant. But it really is about culture, and it really is, how do you gauge the culture? It's easy to point out and say, hey, we've got this banner that says we've got this great culture, and it's wonderful, right? But it's different to see those learned behaviors that are exemplifying that the training has happened, and that the buy-in is there at all levels, and that the accountability is internal instead of external. Building that accountability with the why, saying what is the ripple effect if you skip this step, or when you tell somebody how to wash their hands, they say, well, I've been washing my hands for decades. I know how to wash my hands. Yeah, okay, maybe you've washed your hands a lot, but in this building, in this plant, in this facility, we are washing our hands in this manner every single time. And we're doing it like this because we know it's shown to reduce the risk of harm through our product. We're protecting food safety, we're protecting each other. So when you really invest that little bit of effort to give them the why instead of just the what, and then bring that broader conversation about culture instead of compliance, I think that's really going to be crucial, especially in these next few years, as we see those trends continue to decline in 26 and 27.
Yeah, that's culture is so critical in looking at culture over compliance. Gary, anything you'd like to add to this one?
There's so many things that leaders can do, but if we have to narrow it down, besides a really good training program that's well understood and covers all the things you need to do and is well managed, it is psychological safety. It is making sure that the
Mm.
workforce feels comfortable speaking up when
Yeah.
things don't always go well, or when they do go well. Because I've seen a lot of times where sometimes employees will just check out because they don't feel like anyone's listening to them anymore, or they brought this issue up over and over and over, and they're getting reprimanded for it.
Yeah.
And then they they just shut down. And that's the worst thing that can happen for your employees. So having that open dialogue and asking the right questions and working together, really, gosh, it goes such a long way.
Yeah, and that psychological safety to see something, say something, and do it quickly is so
Yeah.
so critical, right? Because we talked about as we were preparing for this, I think you used the example of somebody didn't say something right away, and that led to a longer problem. And I'm a big believer. I had a sales VP of mine years ago tell the whole team that bad news doesn't get better with age, and I don't know if that's uh, any
Yeah.
more evident than a potential issue in a food manufacturing plant that could have people's own safety or the food safety in mind. And if a problem lingers for hours, you've got entire batches that could be contaminated and have an issue.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
so I'd love to talk a little bit about the culture side of things and go a little bit deeper, because I think you hear that, and I've heard both of you two talk about a safety culture over a compliance culture being so critical. And a lot of times you see it even outside of safety. You just see it, companies talk about, oh, our culture's great, we know everyone's birthday. That's not necessarily a culture, right? That's just a thing. How can someone evaluate, do we actually have a safety culture in our business?
Well, it doesn't have to be announced. If you have a food safety culture, if you have a personnel safety culture, and you walk in the door, you're going to see it in the behaviors and you're going to see it in the consistency, right? So the leadership is modeling the behavior that they need out of all levels of the crew. The crew knows what to do, and they understand what happens when things don't go well. If you really want to understand the culture, pay attention when something goes wrong. So when things are going well, everybody's on track and bang, bang, bang. It's all just it's gravy, right? It's just product is flowing through, pass through rate's great, everything's safe and inspect, no problem. We got a lot of right first times. It's looking great. Everybody is safe and accounted for. But when something breaks, or a shear pin snaps off and a line jerks out of out of kilter, or something's trending and you see our process mean has shifted and now we're all out of spec, things are going wrong. Or maybe you have a micro hit, or maybe you have, who knows, there's countless list of problems that can land in a food manufacturing environment. So a problem erupts. Now, do people still behave in accordance with the stated culture? Do they still maintain professionalism and understand their roles and understand really what they need to do to build the credibility of that brand and that product and to protect everyone? Because, like I said many times, starts and ends with food safety. So, how are we protecting our product safety and, by extension, everyone around us when things are not going well? That's really how you're going to know what the culture is. It's not, like you've said, it's not a banner.
Yeah. Gary, anything
It,
you'd like to add?
in addition to those wonderful things, it also involves, how do we learn from our mistakes when things don't go right? What do we do to get better?
Mhm.
Do we have that comfort to talk about things and have that open communication? Are we involving our employees in hazard prevention? Is our safety committee, do they meet just to have donuts once a month? Or are they actively getting out there and doing risk assessments? Are they involved in conducting training? Are they involved in, accident investigations? What are they doing? We have to have a purpose to make a difference. And these are things that are really, you see these when you walk into a facility and see the culture. It's more than just like what we said before, all the banners look great, but is that what's actually going on the floor? Does the senior leadership get out there or get from behind their desk, and do they invest in the resources needed to do the training, to have the right PPE, to do industrial hygiene testing, to do all these leading indicator approaches that are going to pay off with reduction in incidents, accidents, environmental issues, food safety issues, all of those things. But it takes more than just the talk. It's actually getting out there and doing the job.
Yeah. So, we've talked about a lot of things in this conversation, and I think as I listen to the information you all are providing, is I'm hearing a couple things. One, you need increased investment in your people. You need increased investment in your safety protocols. You need to be able to evaluate those, monitor, track, see how they're doing. And you have a workforce, that is already strapped for time, right? So that all adds up to me that, there's a lot of folks on this call today that are really going to also have to go to their executive leadership and make a case to get more resources, whether that's people, dollars, automation, whatever that may be, to help drive all of these things. So how do these folks go and get buy-in from their executives?
Well, that's a really good question, because let's say, for example, you have a device and it's not very hygienic in its design, and it's really a cleaning challenge, and it's taking a lot of personnel, and it's taking extra time, and maybe it's not getting fully cleaned, and it's really a problem device, and you want to update to something that has a better design, has better cleanability, and you got to make the case, right? Because a lot of folks are going to look at training and updates and all these different things that you can do for food safety culture and for safety culture. They're going to look at them through the lens of cost and return on investment. So what's my return? What's the cost? And how do you justify it? And when you start talking about, cost avoidance, the cost of onboarding, the cost of turnover, the costs of injuries, the costs of recalls, you start talking about those things, and really putting some numbers to it, or even something like operating expenses. Hey, we can use X dollars fewer or we can use less cleaning chemical, or we can use less labor to get the cleaning done if we train our people better, if we have hygienic designs. These things really, really do add up, because they're permanent cost avoidance. And so cost avoidance is part of that conversation that sometimes trumps return on investment. And so you say, well, we can do this one time, and your operating expense goes down by 40% forever for the entirety of the business. That conversation is sometimes more compelling than just focusing on ROI. You say, well, that doesn't generate any new income for me.
Mhm.
Okay, no, it doesn't generate new income, but look at all the ways that it benefits you. So I think those are important conversations to have.
Yeah, it's so important to make sure that you connect with executives on their level using their language that makes sense to them. Simplistic bullet points, succinctness, data to show how safety processes can help us save money with lowered injury potentials,
Mhm.
and presenting it more of a, strategic business asset that really will drive the results that we want instead of a compliance cost. It's an
Yeah.
investment into what we do, and it has such an effect on everything that we do: food
Yeah.
safety, quality, lean, inventory management, production. It has such a ripple effect when you have employees that are actively engaged and working safely because they're given the right resources to do it right. Everything else just seems to work itself out in some ways.
Yeah.
Some of
And
these other things we don't have to worry as much about because we are staying ahead of it with the
Yeah.
leading indicators that we put in place,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
right.
Well, and you
And
talk about that. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
no, I was gonna say, anytime you can drop the insurance,
Yeah.
and not just workman's comp insurance, but any kind of liability insurance, those insurance rates are tracked and adjusted per performance. And so, hey, we've gone, you know, X number of you can show that you've gone 40 fiscal quarters, 10 years without an incident. Or let's say you've gone, 20 fiscal quarters. I've gone this many fiscal quarters without an incident, or I don't have any micro hits in my environmental monitoring quarter after quarter after quarter. I don't have any pathogenic problems, or I don't have any, you know, whatever the metric is. You can look at your KPIs, and you can share those not just with the executives but also with the insurance companies, and you can reduce your rates, and that's an important savings opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and you both talked a lot about that cost avoidance side, and I, as somebody who's worked in marketing, I can tell you too that a gigantic cost of any incident is that brand rebuilding cost, right?
Oh my, yeah.
That is not a small dollar figure, and
Mhm.
that cost avoidance is so important.
Well, there's the practical expense of if there were a recall or if someone were harmed by product. Okay, you have regulatory scrutiny, you have the public image damage, but you have to isolate that product. You
Yep.
have to track it all down. You have to condemn it. You have to transport it. You have to record all of that. You have to, uh, write it all off. And I mean, there are all these different things that go into all the logistics behind that. And so if you can say, look, the average cost of a recall is approaching $10 million, and you
Mhm.
don't ever want to have that because in addition to losing personnel and losing credibility and losing brand, I mean, you're disrupting the whole community if you allow that to happen. It's so much smarter to just put in the effort to build the proper culture and the proper training, and to have that internal accountability, regardless of who is looking from the government or from any external parties.
Hmm. Yep.
Yep. Well, first off, thank you both for this conversation. I think it was a phenomenal session, great resource for our audience. We do have a few moments to take a couple of questions from the audience. Like I said, use the questions tab in the bottom right to post your question. If we don't have time to get to all of them, we will follow up. We have had a couple come in as we have been having the conversation, and I think one of the more common questions has been, you both talked about getting executive buy-in. How do you get employee buy-in to make sure that they're engaged, paying attention to their trainings, and understand that they're not being told these safety things because it's what they need to know, it's why they need to know it? How do you get employees to buy in?
Well, one thing I would try really hard to communicate to the employee is that we are doing this training, uh, we are making these adjustments, we are following these protocols, not because we have to, and there's some overlord with a big hammer waiting to slam us. We're not doing it for that reason. We're doing it because we actually care about you. We care about you as an individual. We want to see you thrive. And as the business thrives, you also have an opportunity to thrive, to grow in a career track here, to grow in longevity here. And when you invest on the individual level, then the larger level, the corporation level, takes care of itself if you invest in the individuals and say, yeah, I want you to do well and have success. And part of that is understanding your role, doing all of the parts of your role, doing it well every single time, protecting the food safety, protecting the product, protecting the brand. And when you do that, it impacts the whole community. And talk to them about the community impact and talk to them about the local schools and the parks and the things that are happening and how does this all tie in. And when they understand that they have a duty and a responsibility and a role to preserving all those good things around them, they're going to have a lot of loyalty and a lot of pride. And it might take time to build that, but once it's there, man, that's going to elevate your culture.
Yeah. I think it's so important to involve employees in just about everything you do.
Yep.
If you're talking about a safety committee, you better involve them at all different levels, all different shifts. If you're building some JHAs, involve the folks that are actually doing the work. If you're doing risk assessments, you better have employees on that team that actually know what's going on. uh, and following up. You need to involve folks and get their perspective on things so that they understand, like Eric said, the why. But also, when they do bring things up, it's incumbent upon us as leaders to follow up. I mean, it doesn't mean we can do everything, but we at least need to communicate back. Hey, this is the reason why we can't have a hot dog machine inside the break room or just whatever. There's certain limitations to what we can do, but if someone doesn't hear anything back, they think that, oh, my voice doesn't matter. So next survey I get, you bet I'm not going to fill out anything. And then that's a waste of knowledge. And it's sad when we see some of that decline happen.
Mhm. No, that makes a lot of sense. I think we have time for one more question. So the question is, you guys talked about bringing in data and kind of speaking the language of your executives, and your executives are not only going to expect data to validate what you want to do, they're going to want to see how you're going to measure the numbers on the back end. So for folks in this audience that are looking to build a business case for further investment in their safety efforts, what are the leading and lagging indicators you would put in front of your leadership in that conversation?
Well, it really depends on which particular measurements you're talking about. So let's say it was something like environmental monitoring. There are certainly costs associated with environmental monitoring program, the cost of the swabs and of the partnership there with the third party that's going to be doing validations and the labor to actually map it all out and conduct the environmental monitoring program. So if you can reduce the amount of investment that you have to put in to environmental monitoring because you have such a good track record with it, and you know that you're doing things right because your training has justified that you can curtail that, then that's great, right? But you can't really curtail that in advance. You have to have something behind it. You have to be able to show that we've elevated our training, we've elevated our culture, we have right first time, we have strong audits, we have strong results from our customers that come in and check up on us, or our third party audits. Our in-house checks are strong. So you can really kind of dangle the carrot a little bit, say, look, if we do all of these things right, then we can probably justify cutting back on something here that's going to, be a permanent cost avoidance. Obviously, there's corrective action and preventative action. So if there is an incident, you have to treat that accordingly, and then costs can go up in the light of that. But you don't want to see that, right? You want to stop the problems in advance by building the right protocols and building the right culture and having the right habits. And when you translate that into, hey, this is going to reduce our operating expenses, potentially forever, as long as we don't have any incidents, then that's rather compelling.
So many times you walk into a facility and you see these signs that look fancy. We've gone this many days without a recordable or a lost time event. And we still see that a lot. And I'm not downplaying that because it is good to have that, as an indicator. But I would love to see more facilities do more of the leading indicator approach, like we've had this many safety trainings with this much attendance. We've had
Mhm.
this many near misses reported, and we've addressed these near misses. We've done
Right.
this many evacuation drills, and we've done this many safety inspections, and we've done this many Gemba walks, and this many Kaizen events, and hazard identification assessments, and inspections of fire extinguishers. We've done all these things. I would love to see something like that captured a little bit more from more of the front end of what we're
Right.
doing right now. What are we doing at this moment to help prevent the recalls and the incidents and the property damage and the accidents for employees?
Right.
It
And
would be
and
great
we
to see
do
more of a
have a
shift
lot
like that.
in FSMA governed plants and FDA plants. You are required to provide evidence of your food safety culture. And so, what is that evidence? That is, looking at your CAPA responses. It's looking at your food safety committee meetings. It's looking at your environmental monitoring, saying these are things we're actively doing to stop issues from getting past our last line of defense. We don't ever want our products to cause harm. Period. You don't want your products to cause harm. Like I've said, it starts and ends with food safety. So, what are you doing to create an environment where any of those hazards, any of those risks are understood and addressed right now in this room before that product goes out into the market? If you have that data, like Gary was talking about the committee meetings and all the different things that you're going to log for your evidence of your food safety culture, those can actually be really compelling as well because they translate into larger cost avoidances.
Yeah, no, that's it's so true, and I think just a great reminder for our audience to be ever vigilant in all of their safety efforts. And Gary, I love how you talked about measuring that. What did we prevent versus what was the end result? Because I think that looking around corners and being proactive is, so critical in every aspect of business. So Now we are right at time. Erik, Gary, thank you so much for joining us for this panel and providing your expertise. Really enjoyed the conversation. And to our audience, thank you for joining us today. We appreciate your participation. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out. And for any question that we did not get answered live, we will follow up afterwards. Thank you all very much and have a great rest of your day.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.